Hello and welcome to STW's training video on CoDeSys version 3. The particular version of CoDeSys that I'm using for this video is version 3.5 patch 5. This is the first video in a series of videos that will go over creating, configuring, fleshing out with function blocks and logic, compiling, flashing, logging in live, and troubleshooting CoDeSys 3. So there are going to be multiple videos, and there's some assumptions that we make when we're doing this training, and that's that you're using a Windows PC and you have an STW CoDeSys version 3 installation. If you have the ability to download CoDeSys from the 3S website, that will not work with our libraries. You have to install the STW CoDeSys 3 software. Also, we're using a USB to CAN dongle from Peak Systems, and we use this to link communication via CAN with our PC to our controllers. So this first video we're going to cover just opening CoDeSys, creating a project, and configuring some of the most common and most often used options and configurations for our project. So we'll start off here. You can either do create a new project here, or we'll do file new up here, it doesn't matter. And the Sensor Technic STW folder here is what contains the templates for the 3XL and the 3XM, which are two controllers which use CoDeSys 3. So we have these two projects, and I'm going to select the location where I will be saving the project. Let's see here. Documents. And I'll give it a name, STW CoDeSys version 3.1. Let's do training. Okay, so we've got a new project created. It's loading it here. You can see the status down here. Okay, so now when it loads, the tree on the left here, this window, contains the devices tree. So when we expand that out, we see the name of our project, the device that it's configured for, which is our SX3XL controller. And we bring this out, and we see PLC logic, and under here we have all of the hardware options and configurations. So we have our mainboard supervisor, the inputs, the outputs, RS-232 serial bus, and then our 4 CAN buses. Inside PLC logic, we have the application, which contains the library, PLC PRG, which is sort of like your main program, which runs cyclically, and all logic will be called from this PLC PRG program. And then you have your task configuration. So from here, first thing we can look at is the libraries. Very important. So we're going to make sure our libraries are here. If you don't see any libraries, or not as many as I'm seeing here, let's check your options. So go to Tools, Options, Features, and you want to make sure that Hide System Libraries is not checked, and also enable Simplified Library Handling. You want to leave those unchecked because you want to have as much access as you can. So here is the standard library that's included with CoDeSys, and then you have the big one, the mainboard BIOS standard for the 3XL controller. This includes all of the standard functions and their relative global variable lists and structures. So, for instance, this FBXNGetStatus function block will use variables that are in this global variable list, so they include the list for you. And also, it will reference this TXNStatus structure. And so for, say, CAN as well, there's different CAN structures that are used in these function blocks, and also constants from the variables, or variables that are included in these constant variable lists that are included here. So if we want to add a new library, so we want to add the STW mainboard BIOS Advanced, we would click Add Library, go to Target, STW, and we can do 3XL. and then we'll click Advanced. So now we have the Advanced library. So we have some additional functions for all the different parts of the controller. So now we should go and configure the different parts of the project that we want to work with. So, CAN, inputs, outputs, our login method, things like that. So we'll start with double-clicking the 3XL. Start with the top level options here. So this communication settings, the gateway is for logging into the controller when it comes time to run the program and see live data. And that will be in a later video. The configuration I'm going to do here will be in Configuration tab. Login type is how you want to log in. It's set to default to CAN bus 1, and that's pretty much all you need to do for this tab is just make sure you have your login type set correctly. And the I/O mapping, this is just something to note. You probably won't be changing any of this, but it contains system variables, global variables that you can use in your logic, and you'll see them used in PLC PRG, for instance, staying alive, which is required for the controller to remain active. And then you have your system relays here. Those are also required to use the I/O. And you have things like system LED variables here and beepers and things like that. So those are the notable configuration options for the 3XL list here when you double click it. If you want to go and configure your inputs and outputs, we can come down here to mainboard inputs, and you'll see a couple tabs of noting here. So the first one, mainboard inputs configuration, is for configuring the how you're going to use all the different inputs. So you can see they're listed here in this structure, where T is the prefix that STW uses for structures. So these are all part of a structure. So you can see configuration note 1 will refer to input 1, so we can expand that out. And you can see the type of input that it's configured as. So it's defaulting right now to a 40 volt voltage input. If we wanted to change that, I can click it, drop down to, say, a digital input. So now it says configured as a digital input. You have your options here for active high, active low, pull-up resistors, pull-down resistors, etc. So that's where you tell the program what type of input you want to work with. And now coming to the I/O mapping tab, this is where the variables are actually declared for each input. So this GS32 input 1 is the actual global variable name that you'll reference in your code when you want to read the input. You can change this if you want. You can type in a new name here if you want, make it more descriptive. So that's the inputs. Outputs are very similar. Same thing here. We have our different outputs listed by number. So you can drop the menu down here. So it's defaulting to PWM, but we could change it to a digital or control current. And then here is the PWM frequency for the different output groups. So you can see this first line here, subgroup 1, is for X out 1 through X out 4, first 4 outputs. Because the units are in millihertz, so 100,000 would be 100 hertz. You can change this if you need. You can change it to 200 hertz or 1,000 hertz. But that's the configuration for the PWM side. Same thing here is the naming. If you want to write to an output, you would just write to this variable here. So GS32 output 1, if it was a digital, you could say GS32 output 1 equals true, or equals 1, or equals X underscore on, which is the predefined value of 1. So you just write to the variable handle here. It's that easy. Next, we'll go look at RS-232 and just some standard configurations, bit rate, stop bits, parity. Same thing for CAN. Bit rate, default to 125. You can set up a mask for the bus if you like. CAN 2, 3, and 4 all have the same as CAN 1. So that's the basic setup for your project. This should get you started. It'll let you know what inputs and outputs you're working with. You know that you've set them up as you needed them to be digital or PWM or current input, etc. You've configured your login properly to make sure you're logging in with the right methods, such as CAN bus 1. You've configured your CAN bitrate here to whatever you needed it to be. And at this point, we're ready to move on to the next section, which will be creating some logic, adding a function block, and making this program actually do something. So we'll move on to the next video. Thank you.